Inspiration.com.
We are living in a golden age of television. It's hard to argue that. Streaming services, HBO, they've been pumping out great shows for a long time. Breaking Bad and House of Cards, and even shows like The Mandalorian, things that would have once been cheap little shows on Sci-Fi or something, are now these epic movie quality programs. But there's one show, in my opinion, that stands above the rest. Hannibal. This is the box set with all 3 seasons in it. Hannibal was a show that when it was announced, I thought, come on. No. I mean, you're going to top Anthony Hopkins? You can't top Anthony Hopkins. Whatever. Mads Mikkelsen. I don't know who this Mads Mikkelsen is. Thinks he could top Anthony Hopkins. Oh my God, does he top Anthony Hopkins? This show is fucking amazing. I love this show. I've watched the entire series all the way through 3-4 times at this point. I'll do it again. And I'm not alone. There are so many people who love this show. It's one of those shows that it's like Firefly, where it gets canceled and you're like, how in the hell did this show get canceled? And why has nobody picked it up? There are so many people who passionately love this show. Everybody knows Hannibal Lecter. This is both kind of an origin story. It deals with elements from 3 of the 4 Hannibal books. Not Silence of the Lambs, the most famous one, because they didn't have the rights to it. More on that in a bit. But the show stars Mads Mikkelsen as Hannibal Lecter and Hugh Dancy as Special Agent Will Graham, the original sort of arch nemesis before Clarice Starling. And the story starts with Hannibal Lecter being asked by the FBI, headed up by Lawrence Fishburne, who's awesome in the show. He's, come help us. We've got this guy, Will Graham. Will Graham is a profiler, but he's a very unique one. He can put himself into the mindset of the killers that he's tracking. He goes into a crime scene and he can see it. You know what I mean? He looks around, and it's great because every little piece of evidence he starts picking out, and then they reenact the crime scene, but he doesn't know who the killer is. And so when you see the reenactment in his head, he's the killer. He's the one going around murdering everybody because he sees himself as the killer. And Hannibal Lecter is brought on to help profile with him, but also to keep an eye on him because they don't really trust him. Because he is so close to being a psychopath himself. The drama in this show is amazing. The stuff that they got away with on network TV, this aired on NBC, the stuff they got away with is amazing. You would swear this was like an HBO show or Netflix, something where they didn't have the restrictions, but they did it. They outgored all of the movies. The kills, they're haunting. The show starts out kind of like an X-Files thing, like a Monster of the Week thing, different serial killer every week. But it evolves. It starts to bring in elements from the books, more and more. Out of order, though. They tell the last book, Hannibal, they tell that story. Uh, that's the first one they really get into as far as really storylines from the books. They bring in elements of Hannibal Rising, which is a terrible book, terrible movie version of it too. But they find the stuff that worked and they bring in those plot threads to inform the show. And finally, they end with telling Red Dragon, the first book, the one Will Graham was in, and the evolution of these characters, especially Mads Mikkelsen and Hugh Dancy. The love, the sick, grotesque love. They're basically in love with each other. When Hugh Dancy finds out what Mads Mikkelsen really is, he's repulsed by it, but he's also drawn to it. You know, part of him wants to catch Hannibal Lecter. Part of him wants to join him and go off and just murder indiscriminately and then feast on their victims. It's creepy, it's hauntingly beautiful, and it's really the best show that I've seen maybe this century. And it got canceled after 3 seasons, and they wanted to do 5. And they were hoping that eventually they would get the rights to do Silence of the Lambs. Instead, what we got was Alex Kurtzman doing what Alex Kurtzman does, butchering franchises. They never had the rights, Kurtzman's production company, to the character of Hannibal Lecter, but they did have the rights to the character of Clarice Starling. And so what did they do? They made a show with Clarice that can't even mention Hannibal Lecter. And the show bombed. It tanked. And when I think about what could have been, when I think about how Kurtzman could have reached out to Brian Fuller, who was running Hannibal, and said, hey, I've got Clarice Starling, you've got Hannibal Lecter, your show got canceled, everybody loves it, you've got a built-in fan base, let's figure out a way to do Silence of the Lambs in this universe. Let's take it to Netflix, he had a deal with CBS All Access, let's do something. No. Kurtzman had to go and fuck it up and give us a piece of shit Clarice show that nobody wanted. That the whole thing about Clarice that's interesting, it's not that she's a female FBI agent, she's empowered, blah, 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 blah. There are shows like that. We don't need Clarice for that. You know, there are plenty of shows about strong, empowered, female cops, FBI agents, lawyers, all sorts of things. What's interesting about Clarice Starling is her relationship with Hannibal Lecter. That's what's interesting. It would be like if you did a Will Graham show without Hannibal Lecter. What's interesting is the relationship. So there was speculation maybe Netflix would pick up Hannibal, because they had Hannibal on Netflix, and it was like their number one thing for a while. Everybody went to it. It's like, you go, it's on Netflix. Okay, let's go watch it again. They didn't pick it up. Amazon Prime didn't pick it up when they had it. It's really amazing the short-sightedness of studios when they know there's a built-in fan base and they just ignore them. They just say, nah, it didn't really draw on the ratings. It couldn't possibly be our fault. It couldn't possibly be that we scheduled it at a bad time. It couldn't possibly be that we didn't promote it enough. No, what happened was, nobody wanted to watch it. Except for these people, these millions of people who are passionate about it, who love it. Fannibals, they're called. And I count myself among them proudly. It's not too late to bring the show back. If it's never brought back, the show does end in a satisfying way. There's no dangling plot threads at the end of season 3. It ends in a way where that could just be the end. So it's not really a tragedy if it doesn't come back. But when I think about what they could still do, it's damn shame. 5 out of 5 stars for Hannibal. Seek it out. If you can't, I think it might still be streaming on Amazon Prime. You could always rent it on Amazon Prime. You could always buy the Blu-ray. This is fairly cheap. But seek it out. This is a great show. It really is. If you're a fan of thrillers, if you're a fan of horror, if you're a fan of Hannibal Lecter and the other movies and the books, this is the best of all of it. It's better than the movies. It's better than the books. Hannibal, the TV show, 5 out of 5 stars. It's wonderfully gory fun.
Their worlds. Sort of gave myself the challenge of, okay,